Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a frontline update for the 18th of January 2023 for the Ukraine war. Let's go to our usual first place, which is the Ukrainian figures for the Russian losses, usual caveats, accuracy, propaganda. Russia don't produce the same sort of figures. And it's pretty substantial today in terms of liquidated personnel. Ukrainians claim 820. Don't know whether this is a result of the engagements in Bakhmut or any other kind of troop accumulations that have been hit by HIMARS or anything like that. We were expecting the numbers to go up with what's been going on in Bakhmut, but remember the numbers will probably be going up for the Ukrainians as well. 9 tanks, 10 APCs, so fairly high. 4 artillery systems, 1 MLRS, 1 fixed-wing aircraft. I think it was a Su-25, I'm not sure. I'll come to that later. 4 drones and 12 vehicles and fuel tanks. So that is a pretty decent days, certainly in terms of the number of troops. Yeah, let's go and look at other bits of news here. I can't verify this video footage, but supposedly Wagner graveyard here. About 2/3 of all Russian Mobics and prisoners deployed to the invasion battlefront around Bakhmut were killed or seriously wounded. Between 500 and 800 militants of the Russian terrorist state are killed each day in Ukraine. That's, again, a guesstimation of a number, pinch of salt, but casualties will be very high. And I've seen, over the last few days, a real uptick in video footage of Wagner trenches being hit by all sorts of munitions. I've seen Switchblade 300s. I've seen artillery being walked in, and even a technical with a sort of anti-tank grenade launcher on the back hitting troops advancing. So all sorts of footage available to show you that the numbers of deaths are high in the Bakhmut area. Vitaly Klitschko in Davos. So Davos is the World Economic Forum. Good news regarding the transfer of weapons to Ukraine from allies. I met with Vice Chancellor, the Minister of Economy for Germany, Robert Habeck. They talked about further support and assistance to Ukraine. This will almost certainly be the upcoming news in Ramstein on Friday. The Ramstein Group 50 countries, headed by the US, sort of discussing what weapons Ukraine can have and arranging that. You will almost certainly see Leopards. I think Poland might even be giving Leopards, despite what Germany say about their export license and whatnot. There's all sorts of rumors coming out, but that it appears that there will be good news. There are, although I have heard things from Germany about, they can give a certain amount that need fixing up by the end of 2023, and all this kind of delayed examples of donations. There are a lot of Leopards around, so there are a lot of countries. I mean, this is the difference between Leopards and Challenger 2 tanks. So talking about 14 Challenger 2, well, there are only really 2 countries that use Challenger 2. Here you've got a whole host of countries using them, and in quite high numbers. Certainly for some of the countries. I mean, look at Turkey; they've got 316 of them. Spain have a bunch. I think even Portugal are murmuring now about potentially giving Leopards. So, yeah, Lisbon saying that. So there is a lot of scope for Leopards to be given, and the supply and maintenance provision will be much easier to deliver than, say, for Challenger 2. But it's about the voices. So here you've got Habeck saying the right things, hopefully in private, but you've got a lot of voices saying things in public. So the Finnish Prime Minister making it very clear that
know when the war will end, but we have to make sure that it will end. Ukrainians win. I don't think that there's any other choice.
So make it very clear that this is now about Ukraine winning. It's not about them not losing, about giving them just enough to defend themselves. It's about giving them everything they need. And you'll find that there's a real unity and clarity of that vision. Von der Leyen, so the EU, head of the EU, the West should supply all weapons that Ukraine can handle. Quote, Ukraine needs all the military equipment that it can handle, and this also includes the advanced systems, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told CNN. And you've got, Ben Wallace in the UK saying pretty much the same thing. You've got lots of people now saying this is not about anything other than Ukraine winning the war, getting Russia out of its territory. Talk of ATACMS, and here's an interesting point that actually ATACMS are being phased out. So giving them to Ukraine won't really cost anything. They'll probably put a price tag on them to show how much help they're giving Ukraine. But really, ATACMS are being phased out. Give them all to Ukraine. Why not? Hundreds of ATACMS would likely never get used in combat, and Ukraine uh, winning is vital to protecting the USA's national security. So it's in the USA's best interests. The USA has reached an agreement to supply a whole bunch of 155 military. 155 millimeter artillery ammunition from warehouses located in Israel. So these are huge deposits of ammunition that are stored in Israel in case there is a war in the Middle East. So if there was another war, say in Iran, or if it's Syria demanded US tanks, this is where the ammunition is supplied from. So it's dipping into that. That's kind of, I guess, uh, second guessing the notion that there won't be a war with American interests in the Middle East in the foreseeable future, that this war in Ukraine is more important. And so they are shipping out 300,000 pieces of ammunition, which is absolutely vital for the success of the Ukrainians. The Australians will provide about 2.8 billion Australian dollars for the purchase of 4 dozen advanced military helicopters. This is incredible, but it is for the Australian Army, um, which is, I guess, it goes to show the effect. I don't know whether this would have happened, but you start seeing armies around, or governments around the world suddenly go, "Yeah, I think we need a bunch of these. Yeah, we need a bunch of these," and this could well be the knock-on effect of this war on the defense industries around the world, and on the political situations around the world, and the decisions being made. It also might have an effect in this case of Australia deciding that they can, get rid of older helicopters, and maybe those helicopters could find their way to Ukraine. So that might be the hope there, but I don't know about the timescales. Ukraine needs stuff now, now, now. Um, uh, Russia, on the other hand, can't get hold of new equipment. So they are repairing and modernizing very old equipment. So here is um, a factory in Cheetah that's kind of been given a new lease of life to modernize T62s, T62M, T62MV, and BMPs as well. So this is exactly what you'd expect if Russia can't get hold of new equipment from other countries in the same way that Ukraine can. It's taken out mothballed bits of old equipment and trying to make them a lot better. But if what we understand they are doing is correct here, then they are adding thermal systems. So it says modernization of BRDM2 to the BRDM2MS variant with the installation of a new engine, a thermal imaging site, and additional armor. And they are talking about this stuff. So I was seeing, I can't find it now, but they're talking about thermal imaging on the tanks as well, I think. So this is decent, as in I was listening to the chieftain, who is a guy uh, who was in the Irish army, then it became an American tanker, and he's an expert on all things tanks. I think he even advises Wargaming and World of Tanks game on their tanks, and he was talking about the use of tanks. It doesn't really matter whether they are particularly modern or great tanks, but if you shove a load of tech in them, they do become a heck of a lot more useful. So he'd rather an older tank with newer tech in than a kind of middle of the range age tank without that tech in. T62 MV that's got thermal imaging and all sorts of bits of stuff is still will have some battlefield use. So it's not like it's this old tank and therefore completely unusable and no use and would just get blown up straight away. It's got a big gun. It's got thermal imaging. If it can see you first before you see it, you're in trouble. So actually, if this all works out, it's all true, and they get 800 tanks on the battlefield, then that is not insignificant. However, this is over 3 years, so 800 over 3 years works out at 22 tanks a month, which is just under a tank a day. And if that's coming in dribs and drabs, that's less useful. I'm going to do the thing in my extra. I was listening to Scott Ritter randomly, but he said something that was pretty interesting, which is if Ukraine keeps getting in these bits of kit in dribs and drabs rather than all at once, then that there's a possibility that Russia can chew those dribs and drabs up. So if you get like 12 tanks here, and then 3 weeks later you're 10 tanks, 15 tanks, and then you get them trained up, and then they come in, and then they come in. That isn't as useful as saying, right, here's 300 tanks, get trained up on all of those, and then we're going to send them all into the front line in maybe one area and do some huge offensive. Those tanks are way more effectively used than the same amount of tanks, but just over like a 6 month period. And each small number of tanks that hits the front line has a chance of being sort of chewed up. So the same can be said here for this Russian provision. And the biggest bit of news today is a very sad loss that I don't know if there's any rumors of foul play here. It could just be an accident, but a helicopter, Eurocopter Puma, has crashed near a kindergarten in Brovary in the outskirts of Kyiv. And there are, at the moment, I think 18 dead, including children. But also the Minister for Internal Affairs and a Deputy Minister for Internal Affairs, and I think other ministers as well, or other statesmen. So it is bad news, that, and that's a real shame. And there's a lot of expertise that would have been lost outside of the human costs of 18 people and children included. There will be quite a cost for the Ukrainian government in that accident. So yeah, it looks pretty terrible. The fires have spread out from where the helicopter crashed. Right, let's get to Frontline. Again, I'll split my news up into a separate video, and a Frontline will come shortly because the video was just too long. I'm really sorry. But here's the news. There was the news, and later will be the Frontline update.